back to page Tough Pay Zion. We'll read across the top just to get us a little flavor, because he's now starting to talk about the Nasira. And he has a different take on it, a slightly different. I don't know exactly how he wants to say it. Let's get this started. Just reading the top. It says Tana kad misarim dinim kashim, when there's an arousal of very hard dinim. La'achzera ba'alman, they want to come down into this world. So then he says the secret of Hashem is to those who fear him. But the use of the Sifra we see over there, called dinim mishtatchim called dinim the mishtatchim b'dechura, all any dinim that are found in the male, the nature of them is to keep it bereisha v'naicha b'sofa, so that they're very strong at the beginning, hard and nasty dinim, and then they rest, they come down at the end. Called in the mishtatchin benukva, but everything you find in the female attribute, naichin bereisha, so they seem to be calm as they started, but to keep it besofa, but they get harder and harder as they go on. Now here's where we're at right now on page Taf Tzadi. So it's a v'ilmadi the savidah gachada. So excuse me, there's a little I missed that part. But v'hioshi yesh bechinas dinim b'zer anpin benukva, because both of them have inyanim of dinim. And if they would not come together, make one. And when they first came out, they were like one part. That is, they had to come out this way, where they had their backs to each other. They were stuck together on the backside. So let's say they were in a situation where their backsides were, why do we get to the hind of the bevukim ach ba'ach, ella choyu shnei partsufim nifradim, but they weren't like that. I guess that's what he's saying. But they were two separate partsufim altogether. And so therefore their backsides were revealed. Lo yachlum alma lemispal. So he wants to say, if that was the case, and they were created as two individuals, then we'll both have independent backsides, which are dangerous. So therefore, that's the reason why they were created back to back. Lo choya ha'olam yachol isbol, as tokabadin, the tinim would be too strong. Lo choya holding the hiskayim, and that the world would not be able to maintain itself. Mach mazachizis ritzoinim shedarkon liyanek min acharayim, that suck off of the backsides, back of our backsides. The atik the hatikim steamed the kula, until the Eric Anpin, who is unknowable, are steamed the kula, closed from everything. Parish da b'da, he separates them. So this is the reason. Parish da min da. That's what he says, right? So he's v'kein choya devukim ach ba'ach. So therefore, they were clinging to their backsides, were stuck together. Eric Anpin Handikra Atik Datikin. So once again, pointing out that the different uses in the name of Atik, Hasansa Mikal Hasaga, closed up and not reachable or understandable or knowable. Hifrisham Zebazem. So now he makes in one big swoop. He says that the separation of them actually comes from Eric Anpin. Besod Hanasira, and that is the secret of the removal Shena'asa be'erev Shabbos, which actually took place on Erev Shabbos Bereshis B'tachila Prilas Ha'atzilus Kamosh Yavar Lochalon. As these different entities are coming into being, they what was the time? It was Erev Shabbos. It was Friday afternoon, let's say. V'chaverlon. And then they're joined together. So then after this situation where they were back to back, the Ma'atzel separated them. And what was his word? But at the very beginning, let's see, it was Erev Shabbos. Okay, those are the facts there. And they joined together, and the Eric Anpin did. And he caused them to come face to face. When did that happen? He said that happened on the night of Shabbos, Beleil Shabbos. Beleil Shabbos Bereshis, at the night, in other words, it's Shabbos. He brought them back together on Shabbos. Besod Hazivuk, and there they were mated. Ukamosha Yavor is Basman Kahada. So this is the idea that we're saying over there, in order to perfume them as if they were one. So he said, "Behind kadei she is basbo v'yismatku yachad," so that they should be sweetened and perfumed together as like one entity. Because now that they're living together, she is able to bring up what was her words as chamesh gevuros, her 5 gevuros in Mayim Nukvin. She's causing them to go upwards. V'zer anpin mored es achamisha chasadim, and then as a result of that, Zer anpin is able to bring down through him chamisha chasadim besod Mayim dechurim, which is male waters. V'chagavuros shel nukva, and what happens is the gavuros of the nukva mismatkim ayidech chasadim Zer anpin. So this is the process by which, when they are face to face, they have yichud, sends 5 gavuros upwards to the Most High, brings back down 5 chasadim to be mated with the nukva. This process, I guess, maybe take place right away or instantaneously. Now let's explain how is this Nesira comes about. Says Vakad Parishlam Ki Bishan She'erik Anpin Rotza Lahafrid, he wants to separate the linsor and remove as Zer Anpin Menukva. He wants to remove, he doesn't say the Nukva from Zer Anpin, it's interesting, he wants to remove Zer Anpin from the Nukva. Min Devikusam Zeb Zeb Acharaim Shalachem, but specifically, he wants to be able to remove her so that she's not stuck to his back. Afil Dor Mita, the Zer Anpin, as we know, then fell upon Zer Anpin deep sleep. Az Hipil Erik Anpin al Zer Anpin, Tardema Hanikra Dormita. So these 2 words, Tardema and Dormita, there's really Latin words. Tarde and dormir means to sleep in Spanish. Dahainu shesilik as a mochim min Zer Anpin, that is what it means as he put him in a deep sleep because he took his mochin away. Ufares the nukva ma'achre the sitroi. Va'az, when Zer Anpin is sleeping, not hifrid v'naser as a nukva ma'achre Zer Anpin, he removes the nukva from the back of Zer Anpin. Va'askein law called tikunos or tikuno, and then he prepares for himself all of the things that she needs to become shalom. His came as a nukva b'kal tikuneho. So now all of the processes of light are set up in the nukva. Ki ata nisakno v'nigadlu hakelim shal nukva, because now they're put in proper position or proper form, all the kalim of the nukva, the parts of shalom into a complete. He said first that they grow, they're built, they grow, and all of these kalim. B'koach hamochim shaben shal nukva. This is because of the mochin that the nukva received, mekabelas be'esa nesira, that she receives at the time of the sira shalo al yedei Zer Anpin, and we know that this is a story where Ima or Tavura enters right into her and she gets mochin there. Va'atznacha the yom delay. What's that mean? The mesacha l'dechura. Amnam begemar nesira, when the nesira, let's see his words here. He says va'atzna, she hides herself, right? It says Loshen Sneus. So he says that va'atzna liyom delay. She waits for his day. What does that mean? The mesaha the dechura, in order to come over to the gura. I'm a begamar Nasira, at the end of Nasira, when she is no longer attached to Zer Anpin's back. Which does take place? This takes place the Erev Shabbos Bereshis, on the Erev of Shabbos Bereshis. Lo hevia as a nukva miyad el Zer Anpin, but he doesn't bring the nukva immediately over to Zer Anpin, el hetznia osa, but rather hides her, liyom ha-Shabbos, to the day of Shabbos to come, shuhu yom ha-roy liyichud. In other words, the separation, he says, takes place right before Shabbos, but the actual yichud is supposed to take place on Shabbos itself. And then you would have the ultimate yichud, which would have established the world in a nice way. And call Seder Nasira B'Loshen Pasuk. Let's look at the language of the Pasuk so we can understand the order of the Nasira. He says, this is the meaning of this phrase, V'yapel Hashem Elokim Tardema ala Ada V'yishon, that he caused to fall on the man this deep sleep, and he slept. So then what it means, he said, Upirusha, now explain this, the Fiha Sod, according to we understand the Sod here. Shema'atzel, here we're talking about, okay, let's just say the ma'atzel, hipil tardema zer anpin hanikra adam. So zer anpin is called the man. Now in this case, we've seen lots of cases where the adam really means zocher v'nuk. But over here, he says, here we're pointing specifically at zer anpin, v'shol malhu v'yishan. So what's the meaning of that he went to sleep? Heich shayach loshen shina klapim ma'ala. So how is it possible that in the worlds of Atzilus, it's possible that there could be there's such a thing as sleeping? Im kach, so if that's the case, sarak lefarish as a pasuk peshuta, so therefore you have to explain the pasuk in its simple meaning. The Idra Rabbah Adam Arishon, so now we're not talking about Zeranpin, we're talking about a human being, or what is going to become a human being, Adam Arishon. Meshiv kehashena, or shina, v'hatardema ha'amura kan eno kepeshuto. It's not the simple meaning of the way we hear it, that he went to sleep, he went to deep sleep, and then we have all the details that are brought by the Ari. Elo hu sod siluk hamochim shall zer anpin. But what it is the secret of the fact of the mochim that were inside of zer anpin, that came from Tavuna or from Ima. Zer anpin hanikra b'shem shina v'dormita. So it's called these two words, either sleep or deep sleep. Hai hu dechsiv. This is what it means. V'zech shakasav. This is the meaning of this phrase. Shakasav. O Ura, wake up. Lama Tishon Hash Yud Kei Vavke. Why should Yud Kei Vavke be sleeping? V'hayresh Kasav Lashon Shina B'Shem Havaya. So these two words are referring to Havaya. Shehu Zer Anpin, which is Zer Anpin. Yehistalkos HaMochim Nikra Gam Keim B'Shem Shina, because when the Mochim leave Zer Anpin, and they're going to ultimately wind up in the Nukva of Zer Anpin, so he says Gam Keim B'Shem Shina, they use the word Shina over there. He called Masha Naasa the Mata Adam Arishon, because everything that happened down below in Adam Arishon, Naasa ki yotzebel lifni hasod gam lamala b'zer anpin. So it also, according to the secret, to this sod that we're dealing with, it happens as zer anpin hanikra Adam Elyon. So we're connected to the world of Atzilus, and what's happening here is happening there. So as we go on, it says like this: V'yikach achatz metzalosov, and he took one of his ribs. Now, what's pshat here? My achas. What's pshat? My achas. What does achas mean? Achas means one, right? Lama amar chakasad lashon achas. So why does he need to say? So he says it could have said achas ki yoser choyu lo lomar v'yikach tzela metzalosov. He took one of his ribs or one of his bones. So why does it say achas when the meshi daki and nukva? The word achas. Now this is one to work with. He says daki this nukva. The nukva is called achas. We're talking about he took achas, which is one of his bones. He says pasuk lomer kan the ire benukva dezer anpin. It's talking here about the female aspect with malchus. He says anpin hanikrat achas, and another name for her is one achas. Kamadat Amar, like you say like this. Now I'm trying to think of what is the metaphor for achna. So your wife is the one and only. So what does it mean exactly? So Kamosha Amar, why use that word? So he says, Kamosha Amar, achas hi yonasi tamasi. So achas hi, she is one. He's talking here about malchus. Yonasi, my dove, tamasi, my pure one. What's it talking about? He says, so he said the word is kama. He says, achas hi yonasi. So it's achas. She's the one that's my yonasi. So he says this is talking about the nukva dezer anpin, the nikva b'loshen achas, and it's called by the name one. V'kach gam loshen achas ha'amor kan b'daber b'nukva dezer anpin. So that's over there by Yonasi, by the Shira Shirim, and this was over here by here. It's the same thing. V'amar v'yikach acham etzaloisav. He took achas from amongst his bones. Ki ha'nukva chazois choysa oz rak b'bechinas nekuda ketana ha'nikra Tzela. Now, this is a place right here where I would like to stop and get a whole lot of explanation, but I'm not seeing it coming forth. So let's just point out, he says it right here, that the nukva at this point is really just a dot. Okay? So I don't know how that happened, because I'm still back in the same contradiction where he says that as Zer Anpin is created, so is the Rosh of the nukva created opposite his nine. So are more or less opposite his chaza. So then it says that through the hole in the chaza, they said before, which is because of the gevuras, which is Zair Anpin, makes a hole there and starts building her from the top down. Over here, we see a situation where we're talking about the nukva now is independent. So I guess Rabbi Mimra is trying to explain this. He says the idea is that when she becomes independent, apparently she shrinks down into almost nothing. This is what I just taking from the words or the ideas that I'm hearing here. So then she shrinks down to a dot. That dot is called by the name of Tzela. We also had the concept, isn't this the same word as Solea al Yerechov? Isn't that what it says, that he limped on his legs, his leg limped, started to limp as Yaakov Avinu. So anyway, this is a Tzela. He says it's really the Lashon dot. When he says one, he took achas from the midst of his bones. So she was just a dot. But here we have, she's an independent nukva. So there's a lot to be said about why she shrunk, or what is my understanding? That's my question. So then she goes, so now she's a little dot, and she becomes removed. Also, hanukva v'nigdala, then the nukva starts to grow. V'nisakna v'naasis parts of shalom, and she is built into a complete and total parts. So it looks to me the answer to my question is that we're talking about two different times. We're talking about originally, it sounds like she was built back to back with him through this hole in the chaz of Zair Anpin. And then now, but then she's back to back with him, and the ma'atzil, through Eric Anpin, caused her to separate. When she separates, she's a dot. So now she's grown up to full height. And now she's a whole height. And all of the gevuros were originally in Zair Anpin removed, the Nenasrim, me'achra from his back, al achre an nukva, and they stick on to the back of the nukva. So now, where we used to have in the place, the asra is in the place, where of makom adinim, where the gavinim are gevurus shahoya makoda b'Zair Anpin, and so now what was onto the back of Zair Anpin, which were all of his dinim, nisha shkuyim chem racham sham chacham, sunk into that place, and now, or I guess he means dug into that place, or actually, or what's the right word? Sham rachamim. So now you have rachamim in the same place. They've taken over that position of, and they're full of chesed. Ki be'eza shena v'hatar demush Zair Anpin. Let's see what happens there. When Zair Anpin was sleeping, choisen nishma Zair Anpin Mosheches Chaim Mibechinas HaChesed HaElyon Shel Ima. Now, just 1 second. How is it that Zair Anpin, with his mochin gone, he stays alive? I guess that's what the question he's answering. He said because when he's sleeping, he's in that deep sleep, and his mochin are gone, Shel Zair Anpin. Chayse Nishmas Zair Anpin. What do you do with the Neshama Zair Anpin? Mosheches, in other words, his panemius, that part which would bring him mochin, is pulled into Mosheches Chaim, from where Bibechinas HaChesed HaElyon Shel Ima, from the Chesed of Ima. Now, I'm not sure what that means. Is it coming from the group of Chesadim that are coming from Ima, or what? V'hoya mispashet bo bekulo. And this Chesed ran through the entire Zair Anpin. So we could assume, I'm going to assume, that he's talking about the big Chesed, which is the bund, the what do they call it? The Itra de Chesadim. So he said, B'kula. I'm just speculating exactly what he means. V'kol mashu hoya mispasha v'yorev the chesed kach hoya hadinim mistalkim. So as this chesed starts to move through Zair Anpin, we see him at the same time. And as I'm recalling, just saying to you that I know, been through the Rio on this, I don't recall him talking about this chesed that is coming to Zair Anpin, because he was always talking mostly about what happens with the nukva. But at any rate, here he says that this chesed permeates his body, and as it does, it moves down from the top to the bottom. All of the gevuros start moving over, v'cholchim ma'achrav, and they travel away from his back. V'oz na'asa koisel acharayim shel Zair Anpin. Now what happens is to the wall of the back of Zair Anpin, Kula b'bechila chasadim becomes completely in total chasadim below gevuros without gevuros. This means he's a entire giver. His whole body and all his sense is giving over to giving. Hadachu dechsev. This is the meaning of this phrase. V'zech shekasav yiskor baser tachtano, and that the flesh closed up underneath her. Now, what does this mean? Ki baser huso the chasadim. Now, this is what he means. V'yiskor means closed up to me. So he says that. So what's happening with Pirushim? Ki tachas Tzela shehoya ma'achre zer anpin. Because now, instead of tachas means instead of here. Instead of the Tzela that used to be there, which is now just a dot, Zair anpin shuhu hagevuros, which are the gevuros. Baba bakoma basar. Now comes the concept of basar. Here's a straight line out of Breslov. He says makoma basar shuhu soda chasadim, which is the secret of the chasadim. He says like the Breslov they say basar leiv, so a heart full of chesed. Yado nishlam koisel acharaim shel zer anpen, and through this chesed that's now permeating from the top to the bottom in zer anpen, now you have what you have here is you have the wall of the back of zer anpen is all now completed, maybe and full of chesed. Maybe Rash al Basar hu b'bechin chasadim v'rachamim. So how do we know that the word Basar really goes on the concept of chasadim and rachamim? And it says like this: Vasirosi as leiv ha'evan bebsarim. Here's more Breslov again. And I removed the heart of stone from their flesh. V'nesati lechem leiv basar, and I gave them a heart of flesh. Upirusha, and what does this mean? Sheyaser ha'gevuros, he removed the gevuros. Shehem chazakim kamo evan, which are strong and hard like a stone. V'yiten memakomam chasadim v'rachamim, so he put into their place chasadim v'rachamim shehem rakim kamo basar. So while I'm reading all of these things, I'm thinking about my training when I was younger, and I was working in psychology, and you try to think about how men and women get along together. And it's really very important, from my point of view, to understand that the women are made out of gevuros. It's not somebody to fight with because that's their nature, but to begin with. Let's go on. V'shavta the boy l'meil Shabbos. Now, at the moment that Shabbos started to be chal, again, ubebein hashmasha. So now he's talking about twilight, when you're going into Shabbos. So he says the twilight shall Shabbos Bereshis, which we know that bad things happened before we actually got into. Maybe this is the time when it happens. Let's see. B'shah shachar Shabbos choisach omedes likane. So it's ready to come in. Hava Berei ruchim v'shedim v'ilulim. So let's see what he says. Choya zer anpin. During this period of time, zer anpin was creating ruchos v'shedim v'sa'aros and east winds or blasting winds. Shehem mini mizikim sheyesh ba'olam. These are all the different kinds of damaging entities that are in the world. Because zecha b'nigra mikor chet adam erisha. So this all happened as a result of his sin, Shechata be'erev Shabbos, because over there in the Sharkavanos he explains that I think this is the secret of what really happened there, is that now they saw each other independently, and there was a possibility to ingest the concept of lust. And she took it, and she gave it to him, and they lived together before Shabbos instead. Now you're in a position where you're Bein Arbayim, you're in the twilight area, and they've already made their mistake. Now what happens, and what I'm missing here, is how, in fact, that he creates all of these shadim, etc., how he does it. He doesn't say that, but he says in this period of time is when all the shadim are created. V'ad, let's go on, v'ad lo sayim lo. So he said, v'ad shalo sayim zer anpin. Livro b'chinas gufim le'elu hamazikim. So if he would have done that, in other words, he just created the spiritual aspect of them. If he would have created their bodies, asas matranisa b'tikunoho. So he said, wait a minute. He said before he completed making bodies or kalim for these spirits to come into. So I'm just imagining in my mind is that he says these are really mental things, because they don't have a physicality, or they're spiritual thing, but they have no physicality. because what he sees after his bout with this lust that is now inside of him are probably all kinds of bad things, and he's conjuring them up. This is my explanation for where they came from. So he said, he says, Asas matranisa. So Bina comes, bitikunoho, to be able to fix this situation. Boha nukva shihir hamalko. So now the queen. Because tikunaho, I got that wrong. It's not Bina, it's the Malchus. Now Malchus is independent. Chava is separated from him. They've done their thing, and they're on the wrong side of everything. So now who's a Malchus b'kol tikunaho, now she comes and she fixes herself up. She makes herself beautiful. Kolomishin is sakna besod parts of shalom de bechinas panim, because now she shows her face. Now she is around in front of him, and he sees her beauty. V'yasivas kamei. And now the nukva is standing in the face of Zair Anpin, bebechinas panim bepanim, and now they are facing each other, which is the symbol of Yichud. B'shanta the yasivu kamei anoch lon leinin burian. V'ozu shah. So now it's Shabbos now, and now she comes to him in a beautiful way, and she appeals to him. And so he says a word, he says, Anach lon le'inin bariyan. So those entities that he had created, those mental spiritual entities, v'osu shah, sheyashva ha'menukva lifnei Zair Anpin. Now she's in the presence of Zair Anpin in all her beauty. Az psak Zair Anpin l'holid as elu habrios. So he stopped thinking about those brios, and he stopped creating them, shall all these different kinds of mazikim, of all the bad things, tornadoes and God only knows what. So those, even the ones that he already created, first of all, he stopped making new mazikim. And then after that also, he left over, and those that were already created, he says, lo hishlem lahem gufim, so he didn't bring about their bodies. Ella nisharecha below gufim, so they remain lacking. V'tam adover, so what's the reason? Kevin dematra nisa yasvas im malka. Kim kevin shegavar yashva hamalka im hamelach, because now they're living together. Zair Anpin and Malchus. Shehema nukva im Zair Anpin, which is lashon yichud. And they join together face to face. So it has to be nipsak latest amaziki, because now you have good and good coming together, the ponims of both of them coming together, and there's no place for the mazikim anymore. And so therefore it's impossible. There's a barrier there. So it's impossible to bring about a body in them. Man yel benaihu ki mi. So he say mi min achitzonim yachol lekonis oz be'emsebein Zair Anpin the nukva. So how is it possible that some of these bad elements could come between them now that they're facing each other and they are in yichud? When they're in that situation of face to face. Man hu the yikra b'chadai, tell me somebody or some element that's going to come in between them. Me min chitzayim, what chitzayni aspect yachol dekarav az b'Zair Anpin v'nukva could come near to Zair Anpin and his nukva. Shal zen amber, because on this it says v'hazar hakarav yumas. It's a pasuk over there that a person doesn't belong in the base of Mikdash is going to die if he gets there. Ki ba'osa sham ein chitzayim yachol leyanek, because the chitzayim really suck off of the back. When you're not looking, that kind of thing. Yechol the Yanik af min gevuras acharayim, because that's the actual question. If they're face to face, that means that their backs are exposed. So why can't they even get over to their backs now? They're both there. You could grab a hold. Acharayim shel Zair Anpin v'nukva. So that's where they normally would go, and here they are. What's the reason why? He says, "Lefi shebechazara Zair Anpin v'nukba b'bechida b'pana," because when they come into that situation where they're face to face, gavar nimtako kol gavuros acharayim, because by that time, all of the gavuros in the backside had been what's the right word? They've been sweetened. V'nizbato kol yonikas akitzayim, and therefore it nullifies all the sucking of the kitzonim. The sucking of the kitzonim really only you need dinim and gevuros in order for them to find a place to latch on. Misrachim achitzonim the nukva the Homa Rabbah, and where do they go? They wind up. What's his word? They go far away into the place of the deep pit, which is called the Nukva de Homa Rabbah. For Inyan, who the Inyan is really like this: Ki nishlam brias gufim lebezikim ha'elu. If Adam Avrishon would have had another moment, and he would have been able to complete the bodies of these bezikim, lo choya olam yachol hiskayim, then what we see, which is really a bag with a lot of danger in it, that's where we live, but it would have been a much worse. So therefore it would have been possible the world to sustain itself. For this reason, hikdim HaKadosh Baruch Hu as Knesses HaShabbos, so therefore Hashem brought in Shabbos right then. V'hosif min HaKadosh alachol, he made it early. He made it so that we can add Kodesh onto the Chol. Shuhu so bias hanukva panim bepanim. So this idea, now just 1 second, because it may be important. He says that the reason why we want to add on from the weekday into the other is because into Shabbos is because of this. He says v'hosif min hakodesh elachol. We add that on, which is the secret of the bias hanukva panim bepanim. Panim bepanim is the time in which this chopping around to get them together before it's too late. Ki hanukva hi bechinas leil Shabbos, because the nukva herself is the aspect of the night of Shabbos. We see this in the Zair all the time, that the first meal is for the nukva. V'oz kavar koyim min nimna lahashlim brias gufam. So there we have here that it was held back for complete the bodies of these bezikin, as we have said. And I guess that's it or we have another couple minutes, because you're giving me 3 more minutes. So his Omer begin kach, and it says like this, for this reason. Ki lefi shebeleil Shabbos hu shas yichud, because this is the time when everything was really saved from the bezikin, he's telling us. That especially when you add on to Shabbos. Hu shas yichud shel Zair anpin, it's the time of the yichud of Zair anpin, v'nukva, steam of the milah, the secret, the closest parts of the kach, klal hadavar hu, so he says steam of the milah, the stam milah. Idea is, O Nasan shal Tamidei Chachamim, the Yadin, so the time of Tamidei Chachamim, the Yadin Raza Dana, Shezman Oina shal Tamidei Chachamim, Yodim Sod Zeh, who know this secret, which is that the Yichud Elyon took place and takes place at this time. Shabbos to Shabbos, that the time of their Yichud is from Shabbos to Shabbos, the Tamidei Chachamim, who Melel Shabbos to the Leil Shabbos, Lachratzos, Alayla, and it should be preferably after midnight. Ki oz be'ez yichud elyon, because then, at the time of the upper yichud, heim yorshin lebenechem neshamos kedushos ve'elyonis, that's the time when, if you're going to reproduce, that you're going to bring in neshamos kedushos ve'elyonis. Avar bizmanim acherim, other times, she'ein bechem yichud elyon, that the yichud elyon is not taking place. Azai ein zman oinen the Talmidei Chachamim. Then, therefore, that's not the time that the Talmidei Chachamim want to choose. And let's finish here. Chutz mileil tevila, with the exception of the leil tevila, which is a time of mitzvah, at any other time. Okay, that's it, Rebbe, for today. Have a wonderful Shabbos, and my regards to family.